In the late 1940s, one American aircraft looked like it came from decades ahead. No tail, no fuselage, just a single massive wing, powered by jets. And then it vanished from the future it seemed destined to create. September 1947 brought a new era for American air power. The United States Air Force, now a separate branch under the National Security Act, faced a world transformed by the atomic bomb and a rising Cold War. Strategic planners demanded a bomber that could cross oceans, carry heavy payloads, and strike deep into enemy territory without relying on distant bases or vulnerable supply lines. The old rules no longer applied. Conventional designs, shaped by piston engines and the lessons of World War II, suddenly seemed too slow and too easy to spot. Pressure mounted to find something radically better. The race was on to deliver a next-generation bomber, one that could outfly enemy fighters and evade new radar defenses. Jet propulsion was no longer a laboratory experiment, it was the future, promising speeds and altitudes that piston bombers could never reach. The Air Force wanted more than just speed. It wanted an aircraft that could carry the nation's nuclear arsenal anywhere on the globe, with as little warning as possible. In this climate of urgency and ambition, bold ideas found new traction. The pure flying wing, a tailless all-wing machine, offered a vision of unmatched aerodynamic efficiency. With no fuselage or tail to drag it down, the design promised greater range, higher speed, and a smaller radar profile. For a few brief years, the Air Force was willing to consider the unthinkable, that the future of strategic bombing might belong not to the familiar tube and tail, but to a single, massive wing. The question was whether this radical new shape could deliver on its promise before the realities of technology and war forced a return to the familiar. On October 21, 1947, the YB-49 lifted off for its first jet-powered flight, tracing a clean line across the California sky. This moment captured the optimism of post-war aviation, an airplane that looked nothing like its rivals, propelled by 8 turbojets buried in its immense tailless wing. Jack Northrop's dream was now airborne, and on paper, the numbers seemed to defy the limits of the era. Engineers calculated that the flying wing's pure, uninterrupted shape would cut drag by nearly 30% compared to a traditional bomber. Instead of a bulky fuselage and tail, every part of the YB-49 surface contributed to lift, making the aircraft not just lighter, but more efficient at high speeds. The thick central section of the wing held fuel, bombs, and crew, eliminating the need for extra structures that only slowed other planes down. Performance estimates were bold. The YB-49 promised cruising speeds over 500 miles per hour and a range that could cover continents. Its silhouette, with no vertical fins or protruding engines, offered a smaller radar target, an early step toward the stealth era. In wind tunnel tests and technical memos, the lift-to-drag ratio outclassed even the mighty B-36. For the Air Force's new strategic mission, this was more than a leap. It was a statement that American engineering could rewrite the rules of flight. On the runway and in the air, the YB-49 looked like the answer to every demand for speed, range, and futuristic design. For a brief moment, it seemed the flying wing could do it all. Test pilots and engineers pushed the YB-49 further, but every flight exposed the limits of 1940s technology. With no tail to steady it, the wing depended on elevons, surfaces that tried to steer and balance the aircraft at the same time. Split drag rudders at the wingtips opened like clamshells to force the nose left or right, but their effect faded at higher speeds. Underneath, a maze of hydraulic lines powered these controls, but the response was never immediate. Pilots described a lag between moving the stick and feeling the aircraft react. A delay that could turn a small correction into a dangerous overcorrection. At certain angles, the nose would suddenly pitch up, sending the wing toward a stall. In level flight, a gentle Dutch roll, an uneasy side-to-side sway, could build into a wild oscillation if not caught quickly. The test crews worked through checklists, adjusted controls, and tried new settings, but the flying wing refused to behave like a conventional plane. Each attempt to tame its movements only revealed how close the margin was between controlled flight and disaster. On June 5, 1948, Captain Glenn Edwards took the YB-49 up for a test flight that would become its last. The plan called for a climb to high altitude, pushing the aircraft's limits to gather data on its handling and performance. 9 minutes after takeoff, ground observers noticed the flying wing begin a steep, uncontrolled descent. Witnesses reported a sudden shudder, followed by a violent roll that sent one wingtip skimming the desert floor. The aircraft broke apart on impact, leaving no chance for survival. The Air Force Accident Investigation Board worked quickly, piecing together flight data, eyewitness accounts, and wreckage. Their findings pointed to a chain of failures, not a single flaw. Aerodynamic instability at high angles of attack had pushed the YB-49 into a pitch-up condition the controls could not correct. A ruptured hydraulic line crippled the right split-drag rudder, robbing the pilot of yaw control. At the same time, 2 engines suffered compressor stalls, cutting thrust on one side and worsening the roll. The report made clear that no one mistake brought the wing down. It was a collision of technical limits and bad luck. Flight testing was halted immediately. The loss of Captain Edwards, a respected pilot whose name would soon be given to the base, cast a long shadow over the program. Engineers and airmen alike felt the weight of the risks they faced. The YB-49, once a symbol of the future, now stood at a crossroads, its promise questioned by the very people who had championed it. Today, the flying wing defines stealth bombers, proof that timing can matter more than vision. The future sometimes waits for the world to catch up. Innovation never truly disappears. What do you think?